Hi everyone, welcome to Lifetime with Katie. I've got a video today about voting pro-life in 2020. I've talked about this briefly before. I think I talked about this and how to get involved and all that kind of stuff. But I wanted to go a little more in depth because the 2020 campaign is ramping up. Democratic primaries and general primaries are ramping up, and I want to talk especially about those today. But I'm going to talk a little bit about some issues to consider when we're voting as pro-life people and what it really means to vote pro-life. So, we're seeing a lot of campaign and election coverage now. We're getting to that point already, and it's still 2019. Primaries won't be until next spring or early next year, different dates in different states. But we do need to start thinking about it, especially if you haven't kind of already decided who you're voting for president. If you're considering the Democratic candidates, it's really important right now to be researching them and understanding their policies. Or if you are not voting Democrat, but you're thinking about voting for a third-party candidate, again, it's really important to be researching policies. So I'm not going to get into too much about who I'm voting for or anything like that, because that's not what's important right now. What's important is that we understand what it means to vote pro-life. So when you're voting pro-life, you're looking for the candidate who is going to help us advance pro-life goals. They don't have to be perfect. They don't have to be 100% pro-life in all circumstances. That doesn't have to be their single issue. It doesn't have to be what they're running on, because you're usually not going to find that. Very few candidates run on a pro-life platform. Some do, but it's not very common. They may mention being pro-life. It may be part of their platform, but you're not going to find somebody, a major candidate who actually has a chance of winning, who that's their one issue. Now, again, there's exceptions, but generally. So it is important to look at all of the issues that a candidate supports, because sometimes the abortion issue is kind of buried in their list of policies. So we want to make sure we're looking at that. But generally, you want somebody who is going to help us go in the right direction. Now, that can even mean somebody who maybe isn't the best, doesn't have the best record on pro-life issues, but especially when we're talking about president, could help put courts in the Supreme Court, or justices in the Supreme Court and the federal courts, who are going to, at the very least, be true to the Constitution. And the Constitution does not include abortion. Abortion is not a constitutional right. So a justice or a judge who respects the Constitution and understands that just because something is precedent does not mean that it is part of the Constitution, that it's not listed, and that somebody who's got that kind of philosophy, that would be really good. So you want to look at that. But when we're coming up on 2020, we're really going to come down to a choice between a Democrat and a Republican. We're going to have third-party candidates, but I don't currently see a third-party candidate who has enough of a following, who has enough push, or enough pull to really disrupt this. So I would love to see more than two parties, but I don't think we're going to see that for this election. Could have somebody who comes close, but at this point, most likely what we'll see is, if there is a third-party candidate who gets some traction, they're going to pull votes from either one side or the other, but they're not necessarily going to have a chance at winning. You never know. We see the Democratic Party kind of have some infighting. There's a potential that one of those candidates breaks away and pulls enough people with them that they're a serious third-party candidate, but it's not likely at this point. So we're looking at one of these, 20-ish Democratic candidates who are currently running, that we want to, we want to be able to look at them versus Trump. And so you can have whatever opinion you want to have about Trump, but if we're going to look at any of these Democratic candidates versus Trump, and we're going to ask who is more pro-life, specifically with the issue of abortion, there's not a whole lot of wiggle room there. So I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on that because, Trump isn't perfect on abortion. He's not. Okay? there's a lot of things where I'm like, really? Did you have to do that or did you have to say that? But when I compare him to any of these Democratic candidates, I'm out. I don't have an option. I don't have a choice. So I want to talk more actually about, first about these Democratic candidates who are coming up, who are running for president. Every single one of them has a pro-abortion, all 9 months, any reason stance. I'm pretty sure every single one of them supports overturning the Hyde Amendment, which would require, or which would allow taxpayer money to be used for abortions directly. So currently we are giving, in total government money, including both federal and state, Planned Parenthood is receiving over $500 million in taxpayer money each year. So we're already giving them a lot of money. Currently, they are not allowed to directly use this money for abortion. Now, of course, there's workarounds for that because if, for instance, if you give me $1,000 and you tell me not to spend it on my rent, well, I'm going to spend it on my food and utilities and all these other things, and I'm going to have an extra $1,000 to spend on my rent. So it's still you can't really give somebody money and then tell them how they have to use it because all they got to do is move their other accounts around, and they can do whatever they want. So when you give Planned Parenthood money, it's for abortion. No matter what the law says or what they say, you're supporting abortion at that point. So anyway, so we're giving them this money already. The Hyde Amendment currently prevents them from at least admitting that they use it for abortion, at least, forces them to do this shuffle. I guess that's something. But we really don't want to go further in that direction of allowing taxpayer money to be used for abortion. So I don't think that's a good direction for us to move in. And so even Joe Biden, who has been opposed to the Hyde Amendment for decades, or for as long as it's been around, he's been supportive of the Hyde Amendment. He's been opposed to funding abortion, just as long as this issue's been around. He is now okay with repealing it, and that's concerning. So every single one of these candidates is in favor of taxpayer-funded abortion for all 9 months of pregnancy at any time for any reason, full stop. A lot of them are also supportive of if a child survives an abortion, is born alive after an attempted abortion, allowing that child to die, or even outright killing that child and not providing that child with appropriate health care. Most of them support that. Most of them will support partial birth abortion, which is where the baby is delivered up to the neck, up to where the head is still inside the birth canal, and then the skull is pierced at that point. So the baby's body is outside the womb, the head is still inside the mother's body, and the baby is killed because once the head is out, then it is considered born. You can have the feet, torso, legs, hands, arms, everything else out, and the baby is not considered born until the head comes out. So currently partial birth abortion is illegal. However, there are a lot of these candidates who would be in favor of repealing those restrictions because they think somehow it's endangering women to not allow you to deliver a baby breech, which is generally not safe, and then kill the baby while the head is still inside the womb. So that's where they stand. And they have some really extreme positions. I think that's going to be a problem for the Democratic Party going into 2020 because the majority of the Democratic Party is not that extreme. Okay, we talk about the pro-choice position as being abortion on demand without apology, all 9 months of pregnancy. But that's not the case for the majority of pro-choice people. The majority of pro-choice people want sensible limits in late term. They don't want partial birth. They want children that are born alive to be protected. That's the majority of people. Majority of people agree on those things. So, they're out of touch. They're out of touch with the majority of their party. However, that's where they're coming from. They are supportive of those kinds of measures. So, if you're a pro-life person, if you're a pro-life Democrat, this is going to be a really tough election for you because there's not really a moderate candidate right now who is going to, at least kind of, because I know there's some people who are kind of this like, oh, well, being pro-life is more than just abortion. It's also about providing for the homeless and and so there's a lot of pro-life Democrats who have that kind of mindset that like, okay, yeah, maybe they're not great on abortion, but they're helping people with other issues. And that's, and I understand that, but in this election, I don't think we have that person who is going to be moderate enough to justify their abortion stance versus their other issues that they're concerned about. So really, if you're a pro-life Democrat, you're in a really tough spot, and I'm sorry, this is going to be a tough election for you. However, so all of that aside, obviously we gotta, we focus a lot on the presidential candidates, but what everybody forgets is that we have local elections and congressional elections in 2020. Everybody talks about the president in 2020, who's gonna win, who has the best chance, who's gonna win which states, who's campaigning where. We have Congress members who we will be voting for. And everybody forgets about them. So one of the big things I want to remind people is that there will be Republican primaries in 2020. Not for president, but for all of those local elections. There will be congressional primaries. There will be district representatives. There will be all of your local elected officials, anybody who either represents you in DC, your Congress members, your senators, your representatives, or your state legislature representatives, or, there's all these other things like, we have, commissioner and comptroller, and, there's all these different positions, governor in some cases. Some of you might have a governor who's up for re-election. Some of you guys might have a mayor who's up for re-election. City council. There's all these elected officials who are going to be up for election in 2020. Do not ignore that. Don't miss your Republican primary. If you're a Republican or if you're an independent, pick a primary and vote in it. I don't care. Pick one. If there's a Libertarian primary, go vote in a primary. Everybody needs to go vote in a primary. Okay? So we talk about Democratic primaries. There's going to be Republican primaries. Do not forget about them. Okay? Do not miss those. Watch for them. Watch for those dates. They may or may not have been announced already for you, for your area. But watch for those. Make sure you're registered to vote. Because you can't vote pro-life if you don't vote. And so with these primaries, if you're Republican or an independent and you're maybe voting in the Republican primary, or even if you're voting in the Democratic primary, it's really important that as we look at those elected officials, we are looking at who is running. Because every level of government matters. Every election matters. Okay, I don't care if they are running for the school board or the State Board of Education. I don't care if they're running for the community college, board. I don't care what they're running for. You still research them. You understand what their positions are. What are their issues? How, and of course, when you're talking about, like, say, the comptroller or, the State Board of Education, you're not, it's great if they're pro-life, but that's not really what they're focused on there. You also want to look at the other issues, like, are they actually going to do a good job in this position? However, those local positions, those local offices, such as comptroller, such as mayor, such as city council, those are springboards for bigger offices like Congress. We forget how important it is to have good elected officials in Congress, and we see it right now. We see the mess over there right now. And if you don't think Congress is important right now, like, you're not paying attention. Congress is important. Don't forget about your Congress members. Make sure that you are voting for somebody who you want to be in Congress representing you. So there's Congress members, but those local officials, they use that to launch them into higher offices, including president. We have mayors. We have a couple of different mayors who are running for president. They were elected mayor in their town, or city. We got de Blasio running for president, and we got Buttigieg running for president, and they're both mayors, and that's their primary experience. We get governors who run for president. We've had plenty of governors be president. You think about Schwarzenegger. I'm sure he didn't become president, but you think about Bush. Okay, you think about Reagan. They were governors. Okay, before they became president. And so making sure that we are voting for the right people for those offices, because just because it's a small office now, that could launch them into a bigger one. So paying attention to every single person on that ballot. You should not walk into the polling location without having researched everything that is going to be on your ballot. You should not be surprised by anything on your ballot. Okay, if you walk into your polling location and you're looking at your ballot and you are surprised, you have not done your job as a voter. You should not be looking at who's this person. No, you should already know who each of those people are. You should have researched your ballot and know who you're voting for before you walk in. Don't be deciding there at the polls because you don't have any information on which to decide there at the polls. In addition to your elected officials, there's also going to be ballot measures, propositions, local referendums and things like that. Those you should also have researched. Don't just go based off of the little summary on the little ballot. It's going to give you the summary of what it does. That is not the full issue. You need to read both sides. You need to understand, why are people against this? Why are people for this? What is it going to actually do? How is it going to impact me? You need to research these things first. I mean, this is just voting 101. This isn't even voting pro-life yet. So one of the things that I like to do to start off with is when I'm looking at my ballot. So first of all, once your ballot is finalized, there will be some time before the election, your county will finalize their ballot. So you should be able to get a sample ballot from your county, from your Secretary of State or your county registrar's office or whatever it is, whoever it is that handles elections or their election office. They should have a sample ballot for you, and that sample ballot should have everything that will be on the ballot for you when you go in, because it should be personalized. Okay, it shouldn't just be like, oh, here's what a ballot might look like. It should be, this is what your ballot will look like on voting day in your precinct, in your county. This is what you're going to see. So you want to download that ballot. Now, what I love to do is download my ballot, okay, and it usually comes in a PDF. The way in Texas, the way our ballots look, we have our names, we have little check boxes, right? Well, the nice thing is with the PDF, depending on your PDF editor, you may even just be able to click those check boxes and it may check them for you depending on how it's formatted. Or you may just be able to use the annotation software and just do a little check. So I like to go through the ballot, okay, and then I go through, and as I am, researching each of these candidates, I'm looking at pro-life political organizations in my area. So I live in Texas, so we have Texas Alliance for Life, we have Texas Right to Life, we have Texas Values, and I look at these organizations because they usually put out voting guides. And so they have candidates that they have endorsed and candidates that they oppose. And they may have a list of candidates. They're like, here's the people you should vote for. Or in the case of like Texas Values, what I really love about them is they give me all these candidates, and it's not everybody. Some of the little local ones they don't have information on, but for most of the major candidates, they're going to have information on, okay, for this person, here's how they answered all these questions, here's where their positions are, here's their voting record if they already have one, if they already have a voting record. And so Texas Values makes it really easy to identify all that, and they're a conservative organization, which I appreciate, so they're asking the questions that I'm asking. So they're asking about abortion, they're asking about freedom of religion, they're asking about the Second Amendment, they're asking about all my issues. I mean, I vote pro-life first, but I have other issues that I worry about too. So I go down my ballot, I'm researching every single one of these people, and I'm marking off, okay, I'm going to vote for this person, I'm going to vote for this person. And so as you go through that and make sure you research your ballot measures, you make sure you research everybody. And if your, local pro-life political organizations don't have a voting guide, or there's certain positions where that they don't include, it's like county clerk, whatever, or, circuit justice, whoever, or whatever, like there's some of those particular very specific positions that they may not have information for. You're going to have to do some research yourself. See if that person has a campaign website. I always like to go to the campaign website. It's going to be their side of the story. They're going to put their best foot forward. However, there's enough issues where it's like, they're going to say one thing and I know that really means this. They're going to say, oh, they're in favor of women making their own healthcare decisions. Okay, they're pro-abortion, there's code, you learn to read the code, you learn to look at those policies, their fiscal policies, all that kind of stuff. So you want to look at all those kinds of things. But you go down your list, you check them off. And then what's great is once you have gone through your whole ballot, you've gone through every single person, you've researched every single person, you're not leaving anybody overlooked, okay? You're researching those independent candidates. At the local level, independent candidates actually do have a chance to win. So don't fall into the trap of, oh, I got to pick either Republican or Democrat. At the presidential level, it's really hard for independent candidates to win. But at the local level, independent candidates can win if they have a good enough following and if they, if they're a good candidate and they ran a good campaign. So don't be afraid to select those independent candidates at the local level just because they do have a chance, especially if you've been hearing about them, they've had a good campaign, they've got some good name ID, they do have a chance. So making sure that you're looking at everything, those ballot measures, really understand what that measure is doing. I always ask, okay, is this going to raise my taxes? Are we spending money on something we don't need to? Because I'm a libertarian, and in that I'm conservative libertarian, so I tend to be like, okay, do we have to do this? And there's certain things I'm like, yeah, this sounds great, and there's some things where I'm like, no, we don't need to be doing that. But checking all those measures and understanding what they are, just being an informed voter is step one to voting pro-life. So making sure that you've done all your homework, and then you just print your ballot out, and literally you can walk in with your ballot and you've got everything marked off that you're going to do. I don't wave it around because you're not supposed to be like showing it to people or anything like that. So I just fold it up, put it in my pocket, go up to the thing, then I pull it out, look at it, and then I go through and mark everybody. And so I'm going through and I mark, and I literally have my ballot. And so it's usually in the right order, because we have the electronic voting little kiosk. And so I'm clicking through and clicking next. But on my paper ballot, it's in the same order. So I'm literally just going through, okay, mark. And so I'm marking all my stuff, voting, and that way I'm not surprised by anything. Now every once in a while my sample ballot didn't perfectly match what was on my real ballot. There's been one or two times where I've been like, this is not the county position or whatever that I thought I was voting for. Usually it's because I'm using somebody else's sample ballot where they're trying to pull what my precinct is as opposed to my county clerk's sample ballot. So the county's sample ballot is usually the one you want to use. So anyway, to all this just to say, do not ignore these local elections as a pro-life voter. Every single election matters. Every single candidate matters. You have to research everybody. You have to understand what everybody votes for or what everybody supports. And as far as third-party candidates, I would love the idea of a libertarian who's a pro-life libertarian. Unfortunately, the majority of the Libertarian Party is pro-choice, but a libertarian or an independent constitutionalist kind of candidate, I'd love to see them take a major office. And it's happened. We've had independent Congress members and stuff like that. We have some now. But unfortunately, in our current society, it really is Democrat or Republican for most major offices. Now, local elections, there's a difference. Local elections are mostly name ID. Okay, so incumbents get reelected easily because people have already heard of them, and a lot of people go in with no knowledge of who these local candidates are, and so they're looking through and they're just picking somebody. They're either going to vote along party lines, they're a Democrat, they're a Republican, or they're just going to vote based on which yard sign they've seen the most. It's like, oh, I saw all these yard signs that said Beto on them, or we just had Beto running for Senate not long before he decided to run for president after failing to win Senate in Texas. But so people are just going down that list saying like, oh, I know who that guy is, or I've heard that name before, and they're marking that. So you have to be aware of that as far as who you think is actually going to win. But for your part, be an informed voter, know who you're voting for, use your resources, look for your resources, and start now. Start researching now. Not everybody's going to have announced, not all the ballots are finalized, but start reading up on these candidates, the ones who have announced their runs, the ones who have said that they're, announced their candidacy for different offices. read up on them. There's some interesting stories coming out right now. AOC's got a Republican challenger who I think, Sherry Murray, I think she actually has a pretty good shot, So there's some interesting local election people who are starting to come up. Make sure you're looking at who's running in your state. So vote pro-life in 2020. Look at their stance on abortion. Look at their stance on on funding for Planned Parenthood. What do they think about that? Look at their stance on late-term abortion. Look at their stance on research using fertilized embryos, using frozen embryos in research. Look at that status as well, embryonic stem cell research. Or fetal tissue in research too, because that's been a whole controversy about Planned Parenthood selling baby parts, So make sure you're looking at their stances on those things. Look at them. Have they talked about adoption? Have they talked about fixing the foster care system? There's a lot of issues that go along with the pro-life issue to be looking at. So make sure you're finding as much information about those issues as you can. So I hope this helped. Let me know if you have questions or if you're having trouble. It's like, oh, I've got this candidate and I can't figure out how they stand. Maybe I can help. Send them my way. I can take a look and see what I can figure out. But really take it seriously. Do not treat these primaries or the general election lightly. And don't just think, oh, all that matters is who I vote for president. No. Who you vote for in local elections matters actually more than who you vote for president. Because at some level, it goes beyond who we vote for. It goes beyond who you and I vote for president. It's a much bigger picture, but our local elections, our vote counts for so much more. So it's really, really important that you are taking those elections seriously. So thank you, and hit like and hit subscribe, and hopefully see you again soon.